Good morning. I thought today I would come on and post about one of my conditions called Osteitis Pubis and explain a little bit about what the condition is, the varying degrees of the condition, and if there's anything that can be done about having it, and then my story as well. So, this will be another longer video. I've had issues with my pubic symphysis for a very, very long time, but let's first start by explaining what the pubic symphysis is, where it is in the body, and there's, a couple different conditions that you can have in that area. And I can tell you that I mistakenly thought mine was one when in fact it was the other. So I'm gonna make a pelvis with my hands. The back here, where my palms, the base of my palms meet, is kind of where my spine would connect to my pelvis. And then this is the bowl, okay? So it wraps around, and then it kind of doesn't quite meet and touch in the center like that. It's kind of separated. In between the two is an independent ligament called the pubic symphysis. And so this is the area of the body that we are talking about. The pain is located really, really close, like maybe an inch above either the female or the male genitalia. And the pain can wrap around from where the front of, say, like the genitalia is, all the way around to the rectum. It does not go down your leg, though, the same way that sciatica would go down one of the legs. So it kind of mimics sciatica in some ways because of that pain, and I could see getting confused sort of by it, but it does not go down the leg. So the pubic symphysis is the only ligament in the human body that's unsupported by muscle. That's really important, because if you tear a ligament and you need surgery to repair it, that's one thing. But oftentimes your ligaments are strengthened by the surrounding muscle. So if you have a really strong surrounding muscle, then that ligament is fairly well protected, but this one is not connected to any muscle, so it's not well protected. Like, you can't strengthen a muscle and give it support, is what I'm trying to say. So I've had this Osteitis pubis has probably been developing since I was about 19 years old, but honestly, that's just a guess, because I've had symptoms since I was 19 years old. Usually, pubic symphysis dysfunction is a condition that runners typically have. So it is like with athletes. So a lot of the regular run-of-the-mill people who aren't like marathon runners or in high-level sports likely have never experienced this condition, or really probably nobody around you has, so you might not have ever heard of it. And it is, though, an issue in pregnancy for a lot of women, because relaxin is the hormone that flows through you when you're pregnant, and it can cause that ligament to like ease a little, and then your pelvis is just not quite as stable as it would normally be, and that can cause quite a bit of pain. So, we use pelvic binder belts now to stabilize in pregnancy, if this is something that you're dealing with. I fell through the cracks. When this first started, I was definitely not a registered nurse. I had no understanding necessarily of the human body. I grew up in a situation where I certainly didn't voice many problems that I would have, like if I was in pain or anything. And my health wasn't really prioritized. And I remember, for example, my mom saying when I hurt my knee, I'm only bringing you to 3 physiotherapy appointments. So yeah, that's it. That's all you get. And for the fact that I just dislocated my knee, I needed a lot more than 3. Anyway, that's just an example of the type of house that I grew up in. But when I was 19, I went to Las Vegas, and by the 3rd day, I could take no more steps. And this was really my first interaction with my pubis causing me significant problems, like to the point where I could not walk. On the day that we were gonna fly home, I had checked my luggage in at 11 a.m., which was checkout time, and we weren't flying out of Las Vegas until around midnight that night. And so we were spending the rest of the day on the Strip, but I wasn't able to come back to a hotel and lay down and, you know, take pressure off of that area of my body, and even sitting hurt. So I was in a lot of pain, and I did my best to mitigate and walk slowly or carefully, but nothing I was doing seemed to help the pain that was happening. And I wound up getting stuck kind of in the back of a hotel. It was just, you could walk around the hotel, but there was nothing really on this backside because they were doing construction. And we were originally going to go see where they had just done a new pool setup. So that's why we were like in the back. But I couldn't take one more step. Not 5, not 6, not 4, not 2, none. Like, I just had to sit down on the spot. It was excruciating, fire, stabbing pain in that spot. And every single time I took a step, it was more pain than I just could handle. And so I wound up sitting down on the floor, and he's now my ex-husband. He was my boyfriend at the time. I said to him, can you please see if you can go find a little store, get me any kind of like painkiller, and just anything you think that could possibly help with this pain. And so he set off on his mission, and then he came back with a leave, which we didn't have in Canada at the time, which is made out of naproxen. So actually, it has anti-inflammatory properties. So that was actually a good choice, rather than say Tylenol. And okay, I'm gonna preface this to say, do not do this. This is not something that is healthy for the human body, but this is what I did. He came back with like a massive corona. I don't think I've ever seen coronas this large except for in Las Vegas. And so he came back with one of those for me. And I drank that and took 2 naproxen, and that gave me enough, like after it all set in, it gave me enough numbing of the pain in that area that I was able to walk to the front of the hotel and get into a cab. And unfortunately, even though it was only, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that, we went to the airport and waited hours because I just couldn't walk, and I couldn't go back to the hotel room, and I felt terrible because I was cutting everybody else's fun short. And so that man, who's my ex-husband, his mom is a physiotherapist. You would think that I would come home and say, hey, you know, what's going on with me? Can you help me? Anything? But I had been so conditioned at that point that, you know, my health just, I didn't need to take somebody else's resources to focus on me or my health. And that was a really terrible thing, because looking back, I probably could have done a lot more to rehabilitate this particular spot in my body, and I didn't. And it's taken a lot from me out of my life, this osteitis pubis. It's taken a lot of mobility from me. So I've recorded this video like 4 or 5 times now. Something kept going wrong with every single one, and I don't edit my videos, so I'm not sure if I said this or not, but I was not actually diagnosed with osteitis pubis until this year, when I've been homesick with the reduced toilet paper situation that I have the long reduced toilet paper situation, and I tested on a video last night if I could use the actual word and if the algorithm would still push the video, and it didn't. That video has received no views, which is not normal for my channel. I don't get a lot of views, but it's not normal for my channel. So anyway, it's been through this last year that I even got the correct diagnosis. I thought I had pubic symphysis dysfunction, and I thought that my pubic symphysis had actually stretched out, and that can happen. So I thought that that's what was going on. In actuality, osteitis pubis is, my bone is literally degenerating. So the bone on either side of the pubic symphysis has like, it's got nubs in it, and it's got like kind of holes and cracks, and it's, the physical bone on either side is degenerating, and we don't really know what specifically would have caused it to do that. But this entire time throughout my adult life, from the first onset at 19 all the way until this year, has always just been assumed that I have pubic symphysis, like separation of that ligament, and that ligament stretched out. And the reason being is, as I would go through pregnancies, that particular spot was on fire. I was unable to walk. I managed to make it through my son's pregnancy. I got the terrible pain at 5 months pregnant, and I had to go off work super early because I couldn't walk. And I had a doctor tell me that there was nothing in the area that could have even been causing me pain like this, which was really unhelpful. And unfortunately, again, I was not advocating for my health at that time. If a doctor told me that there was nothing in that spot that could hurt, then I believe there's just nothing in that spot that could hurt. So I'm just crazy. And I really didn't question that. It wasn't until my second pregnancy where I was getting an education on the human body and everything like that. And then I was in a high-risk clinic, because my first pregnancy was pregnancy number 2, and the pregnancy that carried my firstborn daughter was pregnancy number 10. And so at that point, of course, I was with a high-risk clinic. So at 4 months, when I basically became unable to walk without excruciating pain, my doctor said, "Oh, you have pubic symphysis dysfunction." And he sent me to a specialist. And at that point, you had to get the pubic symphysis belts through a specialist. Now you can just order them online if you have this condition. Whereas, yeah, you couldn't at that point. So, or at least I did not know where to order from. And I don't think like Amazon was like a place to just get them from. So he told me, well, you have SPD. And after that pregnancy, it didn't get better. After my son's pregnancy, I don't think I tried to run, but after her pregnancy, like I wanted to, get back in shape because I'd had my 2 kids, and like, okay, it's time to focus on me. I need to make sure that I'm strong to be a good nurse. So I was attempting to use my body in a way that, you know, would propel me. So like running and that sort of thing. And just nothing was helping this pubic symphysis dysfunction. And it was really affecting my life. So there were times where I could walk a block, but if I stepped wrong, if I separated my legs from like getting out of a car the wrong way, it would make it so I couldn't walk for days. And I just kind of, at this point I had talked to my mother-in-law, right, about it, and she's a physiotherapist. And, you know, the idea was just, you need to give it time because that ligament needs to slowly kind of come back together, and then it's independent in the body, so there's no muscles that I could necessarily train specifically to like support it or strengthen it or anything like that. And so I just kept going on, and at around the 2-year mark, I said to my mother-in-law and to my family physician, like, I'm having so much trouble with this, but it's been 2 years. Like, do I still need to just give it time? And they both said, if it hasn't healed at this point, it's probably not going to. And so I just realized that my life was basically forever going to be hindered by this, this pubic symphysis disorder. And I had resigned myself that the ligament itself had, you know, basically either torn a little bit or torn and stretched, and it just wasn't gonna kind of go back to how it was before. So that actually greatly affected my life. It did get to the point where at that point in my life, I had to do something specific to hurt it before it became a problem again. Like I needed to step the wrong way or do something specifically where it just like snagged it, is what I would say, oh, I snagged my pubic symphysis. And then, you know, for the next week or 2, I would be symptomatic and have a lot of trouble. So we can kind of fast forward. I started training with a personal trainer about 4 times a week, and we did stability movements only. We were very, very careful that absolutely everything we did to build muscle throughout my body was not aggravating my pubic symphysis at the same time. So everything was stable movements. We didn't include like cardio of any kind really, except for rowing into my strength training program. And he had his master's in kinesiology. So I got much stronger, and all of the surrounding muscles that, you know, still again, not attached, but all of the surrounding muscles were strong, really strong. And that I probably had the least issues with it. However, still, if I separated my legs just in the wrong way, or one of the things that I would find is if I had a pair of boots in the winter that was just, and I would get out onto ice, I'd be getting out of the vehicle and my one leg would slip while the other one was still in the vehicle. That was instantaneously something that would throw this pubic symphysis issue right in my face, and then I would be struggling with it for a while. And life continued like that until I met my now husband, and we decided that we were going to have or attempt to have another child. Now, I had mentioned in previous videos, at this point I've had 16 pregnancies. I had 11 pregnancies with my previous husband that yielded 2 children. And then, so pregnancy 12 and 13 to 16 or whatever were with my new husband. So I had told him, you know, about my clotting disorder, about my pubic symphysis, about all the risks, all the troubles that I'd had. And I said, like, you know, I'm willing to try one more time. I'm not willing to put in nearly as much effort as I did the first time. But I run risk of not being able to walk again after, because every pregnancy that I sustain seems to cause more difficulty to this ligament tear or separation. Actually, I think we decided that it wasn't a tear based on my mother-in-law pulling on my leg or something at some point. And so we set down the route of trying to have a child, and right in 2020, she was born in April 2020. And so her whole pregnancy, I had significant difficulty ambulating. I had to go off work at, I think I was 20 weeks pregnant because of a myriad of reasons, but that being very high on the list was my body did not want to move for me, and this pubic symphysis was a significant problem, and it just never got better. And then, everybody was stuck at home. I did wind up with postpartum depression. It's a perfect storm. Think of 2020, right? And like, I can't take my child to meet anybody. I'm stuck in my house. So it really wasn't conducive to me, rebuilding myself up. And so the depression really hindered anything there. And then when I was able to get back to work, my body was very aware of how difficult it was to make it through an 8-hour shift. I was doing my best to hide the pain. Sometimes the pain was so excruciating that I could just barely walk, and so the people around me would have noticed it at that point in time. And I said, like, this is just a result of pregnancy and my body in this particular area. And I had kind of resolved that, okay, when the toilet paper shortage is over, I'm going to do my best to strengthen the surrounding muscles, because when I had been training with my personal trainer, even though it was still a significant issue, once it kind of like got better for a portion of time, it would get better. And I was never going to be able to run, and I was never going to be able to, like, I knew what my triggers were. Running would be an absolute trigger. I would joke, this body just doesn't run anymore. I couldn't go on like really long walks or anything like that, because again, that would trigger it. And like even one day at work, I would have to come home and lay completely flat just to take any pressure off. And sometimes I needed help like undressing and that sort of thing, because I couldn't lift and separate my legs. My legs needed to stay like right beside each other. Otherwise, the pain was just more than I could bear. It wasn't until, and again, I didn't talk to a doctor about this because I already knew that there was nothing we could do about this. At one point in time, I had read a study saying that 2 women over in Europe somewhere had like a 12 centimeter separation and a 15 centimeter separation in the pubic symphysis itself. So if it's normally like this close together, theirs was like this. And I knew that mine wasn't like that. And so I was like, okay, well, surgery is out for me, because if you have to be at 12 or 15 just to get surgery, then I'm obviously not a candidate for that. And I have no idea how those people were doing anything with that much of a separation there. And so you can kind of fast forward to when I got my toilet paper shortage, and I got the long version of toilet paper shortage and got really, really, really sick. And I spoke in my last video about this, but if you haven't seen that, for a while for PTSD and CPTSD, I was doing ketamine treatments. And one of the sort of aha moments that happened through the ketamine treatment was I woke up and I decided to stop ignoring this part of my body, and that I was going to do whatever I needed to do to try to take care of my body, because that was just something that really wasn't made a priority when I was growing up. And it's, you just didn't talk about it. It's like people could see when you literally couldn't take any more steps, but I wouldn't want to waste a doctor's time. And if a doctor told me just by looking at me that this is what I have and that it wasn't going to get better, then I kind of took that, and ran with it and just didn't bring it up again. And that's large in part what was happening here. So the physician who was doing my ketamine treatments, he said, he was really, really fantastic. He's been my internal medicine specialist since I was 19. And he also deals with my CBD medication for chronic pain. And so when I woke up out of this ketamine treatment, and I had this aha moment of, I really actually just need to see what is going on in there. I need to confirm what I'm dealing with. I came out and I said, can you x-ray me from top to bottom, please? And he said, I'd be happy to do that for you. And that's actually, through all of this is when we found a lot of the degeneration in my spine and my lower lumbar and that sort of thing. So we basically x-rayed me from top to bottom and through my pelvis. And what they saw was not good at all. Like my images from my x-rays were sent to a surgeon, because they came back to my internal medicine specialist and he said, we need to send this to the surgeon and see what he has to say about it. And I was like, okay. And the internal medicine specialist was really confused because he thought it was arthritis, he thought it was an autoimmune disorder that was attacking my pubic area. At this point, we knew that it wasn't just the pubic symphysis, it was the bones surrounding the pubic symphysis that were not looking good. So in any case, he thought it was an autoimmune disorder, but he's like, but your hands, they're not swollen. Like, if it's an autoimmune, you should have a lot of problem with your hands too. And I'm not sure exactly what that connection is, but he seemed pretty sure that it should be affecting my hands as well. So off I go to the surgeon, and I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to wait a long time for this consultation with the surgeon. And he got me in right away. And I was a little taken back by that. And so I went and I saw him, and he said, we need to do an MRI. He brushed over, a few things that it could be cancer, and just kind of a couple of the things that he thought might be going on there, but he didn't want to say anything until he did an MRI. So I'm like, okay, I'll be waiting 6 months for my MRI. And I had my MRI, I think, less than a week later. And in Canada, that's exceptionally fast. And so I instantaneously knew that he was a whole lot more concerned about the cancer possibility than he was letting on, because I did not get that MRI that quickly because I had some degeneration at the bone. He thought that perhaps it was cancerous that was causing the bone to basically eat away at itself. So I have the MRI, and it came back, and the very first thing he said when he saw me was, it's not cancer. And I was like, okay. And he said it's osteitis pubis. So basically, osteo means bone, itis means infection, and pubis is the area of the body. And he said, I have never done surgery on this. I'm in a smaller town. He's a general surgeon. He does do all sorts of surgeries. However, if somebody's in a car accident or something like that that causes the pelvis to need surgery, usually we life flight those people out of where we are. So he wouldn't necessarily see that type of thing all the time. Like, he wouldn't be working with the pubic symphysis, because this just is not normally a problem. And you can have degeneration at the bone and not even feel it. That is clearly not the case for me. Osteitis pubis can be incredibly painful, but there are some people, I guess the bone just kind of eats itself in the right way, or it's not as inflamed, and whatever it might be for them, it doesn't interfere with their life. So he said, I need to send you to a specialist, away from where we are. And I was like, okay. So I went and I saw that specialist, and he basically told me that he's actually seen pelvises look like this before in x-rays. And a lot of times those people aren't actually even aware that there's anything wrong, which made me feel a little bit diminished, like I shouldn't be having the pain that I have from it. But I do know that this can also be an incredibly painful condition. And he said, the images that I have from it aren't good enough for me to know exactly how it's degenerating. He said, we need to do a CT scan, and then we need to do the cortisol injection into the area to see if we get rid of that inflammation, if you get pain relief with it. And so he also said that he's surgically operated on this condition 5 times in his whole career. And this is like one of our top surgeons in Canada. And so he's only done it 5 times because they thought that they were gonna see positive results. I actually now know that the success rate of like reducing pain, if you're going into surgery for pain or for any kind of reason like that, you're putting in a new knee, a hip, whatever you're putting in and replacing, it's only about 50% success rate where you actually get rid of or make an improvement to the pain. And other times it can actually make it worse. And then of course you run risk of surgery and everything like that. So he had said to me, I've operated on this 5 times. It's a huge operation. So what you have to do is, if you take this, like the bone or whatever, you have to resect the bone all the way back to fresh, healthy bone. So any bone that's affected needs to be like sawed off, and then, and you need to do a plate. So because it's such an area of, it needs extra reinforcement in that area. So they have to do like a double plate and like screw it in. It's actually a very, very, very invasive surgery. So he said, because of how invasive it is, and he said only half of my people even saw any pain improvement. I don't know how you cut 5 people in half, so I don't know if it was 3 of them saw pain improvement, or if it was, the other way around, it was only 2. I don't know. In any case, he said, like, it just hasn't been successful for, giving results of reducing pain for this terrible surgery, right? And it's not in a nice area. It's by bowel, like there's bowel in there. There's like your uterus is close, your ureters, like very important things are close to this area when you're kind of like pulling and retracting and opening the body to, get to this spot. So he said, I need a CT scan and you have to try cortisol injections, which scare me because I can't even, like, if you touch that area and it's like a magnet, every animal likes to step on it, every small child, and my dog now knows that if he steps on it, I go, and he flattens himself like a pancake. Like he'll actually put all of his arms like out and he'll just flatten himself because he knows that he's hurt me, and he obviously doesn't want to hurt me, but it is so sensitive to touch that the idea of sticking a needle in there is petrifying to me. Yeah, I don't know if you heard my Gus just grumble, but he just grumbled, and that's how I feel. So in any case, the surgeon was like, it doesn't look good, but if you do have pain improvement from reducing the inflammation in this bone, it might actually say that you would be a candidate for the surgery because it would allow you, a higher chance of, if we take out that, unhealthy bone, the healthy bone would remain healthy and then you wouldn't have the pain anymore. But he said if we put the injection in and we took down the inflammation in the bone and you still had the pain, it wouldn't necessarily make the, the risk reward for this surgery worth it. And so Gus is grumbling at the door. He's grumbling at the door. He wants to go out, but I don't edit these videos, so he's just gonna have to wait a couple seconds here. So this has been a very significant, painful, debilitating problem in my life. And I know that so where I'm at in the situation now is I'm waiting for a phone call from my surgeon here, because he's the one who's going to get me the CT scan and then book the cortisol injection. That's where I'm at kind of in this this story of this. I'm not holding out hope that surgery is the answer. I'm expecting that I will be a wheelchair user for the rest of my life outside of the house. However, my biggest concern by not doing the surgery is that obviously something is causing inflammation in the bone, and inflammation in bone causes the bones to degenerate. And perhaps there's like a burr on one of the bones that's poking something that could be causing this to be really painful for me, and maybe they could shave that particular spot down and that would be a lot less invasive, and maybe it would give me some kind of result. Again, we wouldn't know until we had the CT scan to see if there's, like a portion that is putting pressure on something that it shouldn't. But my concern is we don't know what caused my body to have inflammation there. That particular surgeon didn't agree with my internal medicine specialist about there being any kind of autoimmune condition that would attack the pubic symphysis. He said there's no autoimmune that would attack the pubic symphysis. So now I have two people disagreeing. Like my internal medicine specialist believes that there are autoimmune conditions that could attack the pubic symphysis. But again, he thought it would also attack my hands. So who knows there? But right now it looks like I will be dealing with this for the rest of my life. Even if I have the surgery, there's such a risk of infection. It's a huge surgery to try to recover from. And if he's saying he's only done it 5 times and half those people didn't get any better. I can't imagine going through the grade of surgery that is. I mean, you know, the only other time that people are having these types of surgeries done is when they are in some kind of very large accident that crushes their pelvis, and it has to be put back together for them to like go on living. So I'm in a very unique situation here with osteitis pubis. For the longest time, I thought the ligament itself was affected. It caught me totally off guard when they said that the bone itself was completely just terrible. Like, it's absolutely terrible. I'm not sure what's going to come of this yet. But like I said, biggest fear is that we don't know what's causing it. So, you know, is whatever that's going on in there just going to continue, and it's just going to go further and further back in that bone until it like wraps around like into my hips and everything. I simply don't know. It doesn't bother me to use a wheelchair outside the house for the rest of my life, but if it continued and it was so bad that I wasn't even able to like stand up and walk to the bathroom at night, that would cause me a lot more concern, because that would be saying that the pain is so excruciating that it's like it's painful all the time. And I worry about that. So that's my experience with osteitis pubis. I think if we had gotten there a little earlier, and if you're at an earlier stage, I think there's only 4 stages to it, and I'm like a 3 out of 4 for the degeneration of the bone. And if I had got to it a little earlier, we probably could have just like gone in laparoscopically and shaved off the portions of the bone that are infected. And that would have been a much less invasive surgery. But because there's, you know, like an 1.5 inches on either side of the pelvic bone, I think that, I'm just guessing it being about 1.5 inches, but just based on the images where you can kind of see the color change of the bone through the imaging process, through the x-rays, I'm thinking it's about 1.5 inches on either side. So if I had have caught it a little earlier, I might have been able to, you know, have laparoscopic surgery. But again, I thought I was dealing with something completely different. I had no idea it was the actual bone that was degenerating. It's incredibly painful. And so I try my best to be very careful with my movements. I always wear shoes that are, you know, fully arch support or orthotics, just to keep my ankles in the right position, to keep my knees in the right position, which will hopefully help keep my pelvis in the right position. And I don't get any pain reduction from using pelvic belts, and they're actually really difficult to sit in. So I don't really use one of those. I just use my wheelchair outside the house. POTS was really what pushed getting a wheelchair over the edge, because I have dysautonomia and can no longer stand. So, you know, I do use wheelchairs outside of the house, but even if my POTS was 100% better and standing and walking wasn't an issue for POTS, it absolutely would be an issue for my osteitis pubis. So it is what it is. I don't know what the future holds with it. It does concern me, but I don't let it like override my life with fear. But what I would say, if you have pain right in that pubic symphysis area, don't assume it's ligament only. Go to your physician and ask for the x-ray, because if you could maybe catch the degeneration of the bone itself at a much earlier stage, then I think your chances of having a positive outcome are much higher than mine. So please do not let this go for a decade and just assume when somebody says it's not going to go back, you know, you need imaging on this one to come to conclusion as to whether or not it's ligament or whether it's bone involvement. And you can have cancer now in that bone. Luckily I don't. It's not eating itself away because of cancer, but you know, pain in that area can be cancer eating the bone, which it wasn't even on my radar. So that is the full story of my osteitis pubis. You know, if you have issues with your pubic symphysis in any way, I'd love to open a discussion. If you have osteitis pubis, I'd love to hear, you know, how you found out that you had it and what you do to mitigate the pain that is associated with it. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day and happy health to everyone. Bye, guys.